I married Charles, a single father. One day, our daughter Karen brought her fiancé home. I've been to friends' weddings before, but I never dreamed the day would come when I could attend as a mother. Seeing me lost in thought, Karen laughed. "What are you misunderstanding? You're not a blood relative, we're not family, so you're not invited to the wedding," Karen said with a spiteful grin. "How presumptuous of you. You're just a housemaid and an ATM, right? My mother is my mom only." My excited feelings cooled instantly. "So, you're inviting your real mother?" "Of course, she's family. So, please, don't show your ugly face there, it would be embarrassing." Understood. Memories of Karen's insults over the years flooded back to me. For over a decade, I've tried to close the distance between Karen and me, cried in secret, and raised her with all I had. And this is how she repays me. Fine. If that's how it's going to be, I won't hold back anymore. It's time for me to pay back. And it will be on the day of the wedding. I am Patricia, 55 years old. I worked as an office worker at my first job. I've had overtimes and business trips, keeping me busy. But being engrossed in my job meant relationships never lasted long. I was scoffed at for prioritizing work over relationships, and faced outdated views that women should quit their jobs to prioritize family, missing the marriage boat. Then, Charles came from a regional office. Charles, divorced 3 years ago, was raising Karen, his elementary school-aged daughter, as a single father. He had earned a promotion by leading a major project to success, despite being clumsy and inefficient at work. However, I found his earnest and sincere personality appealing, and often supported him as a team leader. 6 months later, I was surprised when he asked me out to dinner and confessed his feelings. After all, I am 5 years his senior and not good at romance. Flustered, Charles told me with a flushed face. I had sworn off marriage. "But getting to know you, Patricia, I found myself wanting you by my side." "Thank you. That means a lot to me. But what about your daughter's feelings?" Karen encouraged me. She said not to hold back on our account, that it was okay to welcome a new mom. Thus, we dated, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes including Karen. We went to aquariums and amusement parks, deepening our bond with Karen, and married the following year. "Please take care of me, Patricia." Greeted with her innocent smile, I felt on top of the world. To think I, who had given up on marriage and pregnancy, could become the mother of such a sweet girl. At that time, I had no clue about the hidden side of Karen's personality. Karen was as cute as a model. Karen's features, which hardly resembled the kindly visage of Charles, seemed to take after her mother, whom he had divorced. It appeared either she inherited her personality from her mother or was spoiled growing up, because as soon as we started living together, Karen showed her malicious true colors. One moment she would be in high spirits, and the next, she would become upset over trivial things, complaining without concern for others' feelings and lying effortlessly if things didn't go her way. For instance, when she was in 5th grade, there was a school trip, so I woke up early to make her lunch. After we married, Charles reduced working hours to share household duties with me. Although I can cook, planning meals isn't my strong suit, so I left the cooking, cleaning, and shopping to Charles. In turn, I took over laundry, ironing, and managing the finances. That time, with a recipe from Charles, I enthusiastically packed Karen's favorite meatballs and potato salad, only for the lunchbox to return untouched. "Karen, did you feel unwell?" Asking out of concern, Karen retorted with a look of disgust. "It was so gross, I left it." "Can't you even understand that?" Charles, standing by, turned pale. "Karen, Patricia came home at 10 p.m. last night and got up at 5 a.m. to make that for you." Don't you have any gratitude? Huh? Like I care. Stop pretending to be a mother just because you make Dad do all the chores. With that, she turned up her nose and retreated to her room. Despite Charles's repeated apologies, I forced a smile. It's just her rebellious phase. She thinks a strange woman has taken her dad away. Entering middle school only worsened Karen's attitude. I took half a day off work to attend a school event. Karen, you forgot your handkerchief. I called out just as class ended, and she glared at me with fury, snatching the handkerchief. Is that your mom? You don't look much alike. Hearing her friend's words, Karen twisted her face. That old lady isn't my mom. My mom is way prettier. Oh right, your family remarried, huh? Being Dad's boss, she seduced him. Pretends to be like a mother, so annoying. I think you're out of line. But poor thing. Laughing with her friends, Karen slipped away. But it didn't end there. She unleashed her anger on me when we got home. Why did you even come? It's so embarrassing. Stop it. I'm sorry. I took the day off because I wanted to see you doing your best. I hate being mistaken for your daughter. You should realize how ugly you look. Her words about my appearance shocked me. True, I'm nearly 50 and quite ordinary looking. Compared to the beautiful mothers, I might not stand out. But to be spoken to like that. Even as I tried to find common ground by listening to her favorite idol's music or watching anime, our distance grew instead of shrinking. Without my asking, Charles sensed the tension and worried for me. With the way things are, she's probably saying all sorts of things to you behind my back. I'm really sorry. It's okay. It's the same in every household, I guess. I reassured him, not wanting to worry him further. According to a friend with children, rebellious phases calm down by high school. Telling myself it's just a few more years of patience. I endured Karen's harsh words, her disposing of meals I prepared right in front of me. Even her breaking my favorite dishes, all without losing my temper. As Karen entered high school, her terrible treatment of me surprisingly mellowed. Though still curt, she'd respond if spoken to and rarely hurled unreasonable insults. But then, strange things began to happen. I often use electronic payment for my daily shopping. And just in case I can't make a payment, I have a habit of keeping $300 in my wallet at all times. But then I noticed $100 was missing. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding, but when I reviewed my household ledger, indeed, around $300 to $400 was disappearing each month. Charles, have you been using my money? When I asked, Charles looked perplexed. I would tell you right away if I borrowed any. Right, I'm sorry. That leaves Karen as the suspect. Karen has a part-time job by her own choice, managing her allowance with that money. Eventually, it wasn't just cash. Unauthorized use of credit cards came to light. Charges for clothes and bags suddenly appeared on the statement for the card set up for condominium rent and utility payments. The card and its PIN were stored in a drawer of the chest, accessible to any family member. When I broached the subject with Charles, even the usually mild-mannered Charles tensed up. What is she doing? Let's not get angry just yet. Karen is 17. I want her to come clean on her own. If you say so, I guess we should wait a bit longer. Charles agreed, though not convinced. After graduating from college, Karen quit her job after just one day and spent her time at home, working part-time 3 days a week. Thinking I wouldn't notice, the money in my wallet continued to diminish, and the card statements kept increasing. But money wasn't my only concern. Despite having the most free time in the family, Karen did not do any household chores. Working full-time and often away on business trips, I tended to rely on Charles, who worked less time than me. Yet, even so, I took care of laundry, ironing, and other small tasks. Karen, working only 3 days a week, wouldn't even wash a coffee cup she used, resisted doing groceries when asked, and spent her days off playing games or going out. One day, as I considered bringing this up, Karen hesitantly started a conversation during dinner. "There's someone I want to introduce you to." Since she hadn't shown any signs of such a development, both Charles and I were surprised. James, who came to greet us, was a refreshingly pleasant and well-mannered young man. With his back straight and visibly nervous, James shared how they met. "I met Karen at the hospital reception. I was staggering from a fever, and she gave me a very kind smile." James seemed deeply drawn to Karen. "She was kind to other patients too, and she looked radiant." Karen's workplace was a hospital in a high-end residential area. The place naturally attracted celebrities, making her motives for working there quite clear. She chose a part-time job because she disliked commuting every day. James comes from a family that runs a business, and he seems to work as a manager in his parents' company. Landing a wealthy heir within 6 months of working, it was all according to Karen's plan. "We've already decided on the wedding venue," Karen said excitedly. "We're inviting about 60 people from James's company connections, so we rented a large hall. The invitations have already been sent out. Please keep the first Sunday coming up in 3 months free." "Got it. We're looking forward to it." Charles and I exchanged warm smiles with the shyly smiling Karen and James. My heart warmed. She's not my own child, and we've had our issues, but I welcome the happiness of my family. I went to the kitchen with a spring in my step to prepare more coffee, and Karen followed. "A wedding, huh? I've been to friends' weddings, but never thought the day would come when I could attend as a mother." Seeing me lost in thought, Karen laughed. "What are you misunderstanding? You're not a blood relative, we're not family, so you're not invited to the wedding," Karen said with a malicious smile. Stunned, I listened as Karen disdainfully explained. "How presumptuous of you. You're just a housemaid and an ATM. My mother is my mom only." My spirits, once lifted, sank instantly. "So, you're inviting your real mother?" "Of course, she's family. So definitely don't show your ugly face there, it would be embarrassing." "Understood." Facing Karen's malicious laugh, I suppressed my rising anger and responded in a low voice. Seemingly satisfied with getting her point across, Karen hummed a tune as she went back to her room. As I arranged the cake I had prepared for this day on the tray, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Memories of Karen's insults over the years came flooding back. For over a decade, I've tried to close the distance between us, crying in secret and raising her with all my might. And yet, this is how she repays me. Fine, if that's how it's going to be, I won't hold back anymore. It's time for me to pay back. And it will be on the day of the wedding. The day of Karen's wedding finally arrived. Charles and I dressed casually, without any special effort, and headed to the venue. In the venue's waiting room, Karen and a woman in a black dress, who arrived earlier, were happily chatting. Karen distorted her face in displeasure upon seeing me. I told you it would be embarrassing for you to come." Charles's face turned pale, and as he was about to confront Karen, I stopped him with my hand. The woman in the dress had flashy features similar to Karen's. Looked at me up and down and sneered. "So, you're Charles's new woman?" "No, his wife." "Thank you both for taking care of her." "Thank you. Why are you here?" Margaret laughed at Charles's question, who was looking like he had swallowed something bitter. "Isn't it odd for a mother not to attend her daughter's wedding? But it's ridiculous to kick Patricia out. She's the one who raised Karen for over a decade. Then, Karen glared at me as if I were an annoyance. I never thought of her as my mother. Karen. Let's stop, it's a happy day. Margaret intervened with a laugh. The guests will be arriving soon. Right, Mom. But she ruined my mood. Just think that she's here only to make us shine. I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and astonishment at their unabashed rudeness. Such a like-minded mother and daughter. Well, let them be. Let them enjoy their moment of triumph for now. As Charles and I were about to leave the room, Karen said in a cloying voice, Dad, it's okay for you to stay. Charles gently pushed my back and silently stepped out into the corridor, closing the door behind us. Let's wait in the lobby until it's time. Sounds good. About 30 minutes later, as we were chatting in the lobby, the door to the waiting room burst open, and Karen, in her wedding dress, appeared. She ran down the corridor, then came back, pacing restlessly with a frustrated look. James. Where the hell is he? The ceremony is about to start. Frustration and a shrill voice marred her beautifully styled hair. Hasn't he replied yet? It's unlike James to be late. With Karen looking pale and Margaret looking worried. The staff standing by all looked confused. Even after the ceremony time passed, neither the groom nor the guests showed up. The host and photographers gathered in the hallway, starting to murmur among themselves. Karen apologized to the staff with a gloomy expression. I'm sorry. I can't reach my relatives. The friend I asked to manage the reception hasn't shown up either. What's going on? Didn't you say non-family members aren't invited to the wedding? Karen turned to me in surprise. So, I told everyone. That Karen didn't want to invite those who weren't family. After a few seconds of silence, Margaret rushed at me, screaming in anger. Is this your fault? How dare you ruin my daughter's important wedding? Margaret! As Margaret attempted to grab me, Charles caught her arm to stop her. Let go. The fault lies with Karen, who repays over a decade of care with betrayal. It's Dad who married on his own. I didn't ask for this. It was you who suggested the marriage. Charles frowned in dismay. You do realize that you were only able to attend cram schools and private university thanks to Patricia. Despite never needing a scholarship, you never even thanked her. Of course I know. When I heard he was a supervisor, I suggested marrying her because she seemed wealthy. Karen smirked maliciously. After all, that's all you've got, you old lady. So, marrying a plain old lady was all about the money? Margaret sneered, to which Charles replied sternly. As usual, money's all you think about. Still squandering it on men, are you? At that moment, Karen's eyes widened in shock. Huh? Looking back and forth between Charles and Margaret, she asked. Mom's too sick to work and struggling to get by, right? My eyes widened in surprise. Her shouting at me earlier didn't seem like she was in such dire straits. Before long, the staff had disappeared, likely unable to handle a domestic dispute. Dad, Mom said she was scrimping to pay rent and couldn't afford proper meals. So I gave her the money I stole from Patricia and bought brand bags with the card so she could pawn them for cash. Charles sighed and glared at Margaret. To think you'd stoop so low as to lie to your daughter to take her money. Well, it's precisely why we divorced. Karen's eyes bulged, and she protested. Wait. I was told the divorce was due to irreconcilable differences. No, your mom took money from my salary for her lover and then vanished. After she contacted me again, we divorced and I agreed she could see you. Stunned, Karen looked lost. That can't be. Meeting Margaret today was fortunate. It saves me the effort of contacting her. Now that I've identified the affair partner, I'll be claiming compensation. It's too late to claim damages for adultery now, Margaret shouted. I snorted. Don't you know? If the partner wasn't identified at the time of divorce, it can be retroactively applied. Karen, teary-eyed, confronted Margaret. That's awful. You lied to me. I thought I was repaying my mom by stealing from her. What? Pretending to be the good girl now? You made a fortune selling those bags and jewelry online. Margaret laughed derisively, causing Karen to shake her shoulders. Is that true? Karen puffed out her cheeks, at a loss for words. Don't say unnecessary things, Mom. It makes me look like a gold digger. Well, you're one, aren't you? Too bad, though. Even if you manage to charm a rich man, it's pointless if you can't marry him. You were so happy thinking you'd live a life of leisure. Margaret lamented, and Karen pursed her lips. It's not over yet. I can just reschedule for another day. I'll smooth things over and make sure the marriage happens. I won't let this wealthy catch get away. As Karen clenched her fist and shouted defiantly, the door in front of us quietly opened. A man emerged from the waiting room, causing Karen's color to drain from her face. James. James looked at Karen with a chilly gaze. I've heard everything. From you hurling insults at Patricia, all of it. Karen collapsed to her knees. How could you? Isn't this too much? Who does this? It must be your doing, right? Charles calmly responded to Karen's accusations. I thought about it with her too. How we could get you to reflect on her actions. I didn't want James to regret marrying her, so I decided to show him the truth. James looked down sadly and nodded. I believed Karen was different from the other women I've dated, not after my money. It seems I was wrong to judge people. It's disappointing. It's not like that. It was just a little surprise. Right, a wedding surprise, right, Mom? Right. You wouldn't say you're calling off the engagement, would you? For some reason, even Margaret began to tremble with fear. Karen, this is troublesome. I was counting on James's money to pay off my debts. If the engagement is broken, we're in trouble. Mom, are you serious? Karen's voice dripped with anger. How much more do you plan to rely on me? If you're out of money, get a job for once. Stop bossing your mother around. I just broke up with my boyfriend, and now you're all I have. If this doesn't work out, hurry up and marry someone else, a rich man who can support me. I don't care about your life, Mom. I'm marrying for myself. James, you love me, right? You'll marry me, won't you? Pressed by Karen's bloodshot eyes, James stepped back with a stiff face and said, I'm sorry. Let's call off the engagement. We'll discuss compensation through lawyers later. James shook off Karen's clinging hands and ran away. Karen chased him to the parking lot but seemed to be turned away. Returning to the entrance with a face filled with rage, she screamed like a demon. Patricia! This is all your fault. I'll demand compensation. How could you ruin your lovely daughter's wedding? You need to properly compensate for hurting Karen. I'll contribute to the payment with Patricia since I was part of this. Karen's face lit up, but she froze at Charles's next words. In return, we'll claim the money you stole from Patricia's wallet and the unauthorized card charges. It's only natural, right? Nearly $400 a month for almost 7 years since you were 16. That's $33,600. Including the card charges, it's over $50,000. Yes, and I'll also be claiming compensation for the verbal abuse you directed at me. Make sure you pay up. Karen's eyes widened in terror, shaking. I can't pay that. Wait, I gave half to Mom, so you'll pay your share, right? But Margaret, who had just been supporting her daughter, now turned away coldly and rejected her. You were the one who wanted to help me. Don't make it sound like I demanded money from my daughter. You did, though. You're paying half. As Karen raised her voice, Margaret sighed and ran her fingers through her long hair. Impossible. I'm already full of debts for compensating for the affair and repaying loans. I shouldn't have come today. We've already called a lawyer. Trying to escape is futile. Looking at the man in a suit standing behind us, Margaret clicked her tongue in frustration. I was astounded by Margaret's irresponsibility and lack of affection for her daughter. Karen, raised by such a mother, might also be a victim. Over several years, Charles used a detective agency to track down Margaret's affair partner, a club employee Margaret frequented. When Charles demanded compensation from the employee and Margaret, the employee paid in full. But Margaret, having no savings, tried to dodge responsibility until the end. Warned by a lawyer about the extra costs of a lawsuit, Margaret finally agreed to pay the compensation in installments. Of course, we arranged to seize her bank accounts if she defaulted, as she was not to be trusted. In addition to paying Charles compensation, Margaret ended up having to work for the first time in decades to cover the cancellation fee for the wedding with Karen. Charles said he saw her in town looking completely worn out from working from early morning till late at night. And Karen, having broken off her engagement with James, found herself saddled with nearly $100,000 in debt. This included compensation to James, the wedding day cancellation fees, plus the money she stole from Patricia's wallet and the unauthorized card use. She paid with what little savings she had and, like Margaret, is now making installment payments. Karen has taken on additional part-time jobs besides her hospital reception work, living a life of continuous work both on weekdays and weekends. She started living with Margaret in an old apartment to save on rent. But their relationship turned sour after the wedding was canceled, leading to constant quarrels. I felt relieved that there were no more unauthorized card uses or thefts from my wallet. And the pressure to get along with Karen disappeared, lightening my spirit. After the wedding was canceled and we apologized to the staff before going home, Charles apologized to me. I'm sorry for the trouble Margaret and Karen caused. It's my fault for choosing such a wife and failing to raise my daughter properly. It's okay now. It's good that Margaret's affair partner was found. Seeing Charles apologize repeatedly with a genuinely remorseful expression, I smiled at him. Charles is certainly compassionate and I felt he had been indulgent with Karen. But raising a child isn't a one-person job. The fact that Karen grew up spoiled is also partly my fault for being too lenient with her. I have some big news, I shared with Charles, my heart pounding. What is it? I'm pregnant. Charles was astonished. It's been confirmed by the doctor. It's a high-risk pregnancy, but is it okay if we go ahead? Of course. I'm so happy. Charles hugged me with a broad smile, and all my worries vanished. I had been afraid to prioritize our own child over Karen, so we decided to wait until Karen was grown up before trying for a pregnancy. Though I had almost given up, miraculously, it happened. I'm looking forward to lovingly raising the child we're now expecting.